What's going on, y'all? Recently, I've been doing my team-by-team predictions for the NBA, right? Try to do all 30 teams. I haven't made the videos yet, but I've been working through the process of it. And I've come to the conclusion that the hardest team to predict this year is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. In terms of like their range of outcomes is probably greater than any other team. And maybe that's not in a regular season win perspective, because I'd be pretty surprised if they're not pushing for 50 wins, which, you know, could be anywhere from the 5 seed to the 1 seed in the East, knowing how that's going to play out. But just in terms of how serious they are as a contending team, because I believe like the path is reasonably there for them. But I also think that there's a lot of questions about them that nobody really knows the answers to. And the only way we're going to figure it out is watching them go play this year. To me, they've got a big three, I guess if you want to call it, in Embiid, Maxey, and Harden that I really believe in. I like all of those players. But I think there's questions about exactly how good all three of those guys are going to be next year, right? With Embiid, I mean, you know he's going to play at an MVP level and not actually win the award, but you'll know he'll play at that level. It's just an injury thing with him, right? And my philosophy is that, okay, well, every year we see the playoffs, we see how the healthiest team, the healthiest contending team is the one who makes it out and wins it all, right? Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Embiid is the type of guy you're going to build a championship team around, but if your number one is already relatively injury prone, you're at a pretty big disadvantage at staying healthy, which is the most important thing, right? I understand that he played a good amount of games, and I understand the playoff injury he had this time was like particularly bad luck. Orbital fracture, got elbowed in the end of the game. It didn't even matter, right? But obviously Embiid is still one of the more injury-prone players in the league. So with him, it's not even a question about how good he is. We know how good he is. It's how often are you going to be able to see him play that good? And if he's limping into the playoffs, I think you're shot, right? With Harden, it's the same thing. It's injury concerns, except with him, it's a little bit different. Because with Harden, there are two camps that you can believe. Like there's two thought processes. Either Harden has reached the point where injuries are always going to be nagging him, the hamstring is going to linger, and he's just not going to have the same burst that he's always had, and that he's just not going to be the same player. And a lot of people will be like, oh, look, he's getting exposed. I would see that more as like, that's kind of natural. He's 33 years old right now. It's getting to be about that time for him. But with the modern NBA, you don't know. Some guys are great until they're 36, 37, and Harden definitely has the skill set to be like that. Some guys, the injuries get them or the athleticism goes earlier, and it doesn't work out like that. The other camp you can believe is that Harden's hamstring bothering him was a temporary thing. It killed him in the playoffs. He obviously wasn't himself. And that this next season, he's going to return. He's going to be 100% better. He's going to be really committed to winning. And it seems like he is with the pay cut that he's taken. And it seems like, you know, he's in pretty good shape right now. And that you will get a version of James Harden that maybe isn't, you know, like 2018 Rockets. Oh my God, how is this guy doing this level of player? But if he can just be how he was when he first joined Brooklyn, where he was in MVP talks that year, and you pair that with another guy, an Embiid, who could be in MVP talks, boom, you're golden. Now, Harden himself has come out and said, you know, you've seen the reports. Hey, well, I'm fine now. People are underestimating me. I almost averaged a triple-double last year, and I was hurt. Now I'm healthy. I'm going to be 100% better. And I would like to believe that, but you also have to take that with a grain of salt, naturally, right? And then with Tyrese Maxey, my questions about him aren't like, oh, is he going to be able to blah, blah, blah. It's like my questions about him are, is he going to take another step? Is that in the cards for Tyrese Maxey? Or is he kind of capped out? Or does he even need to take another step? So you look at those three guys and you're like, man, there's a lot of ranges of outcomes. But I'm a 76ers fan. I'm saying, hey, if we can get a healthy James Harden, healthy Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey takes another step, why not? You know, why can't you be a contending team, a super serious contending team? Because the roster build otherwise is pretty great. I mean, Tobias Harris gets a lot of hate for being overpaid, but if he's your fourth option, you know, who cares, I guess. You know, PJ Tucker was a nice addition. Melton was a nice addition. That bench is probably still a guy away, but them making a move at the deadline or buying somebody out is in the cards as well. That can totally happen. So I'm not going to judge that too harshly. And I'm a big Daryl Morey believer. So I think that he'll be able to figure something out if need be. But it's just with the 76ers, it's a tough team to gauge because really what it is health concerns for them. Because I think once they're on the court, even with the Doc Rivers stuff, at the end of the day, you don't need coach of the year to go out and tell Joel Embiid and James Harden to run a pick and roll 40 times a game, 100 times a game. It's not that difficult, I'm afraid. And yeah, you're definitely at a disadvantage with Doc a little bit because I don't think his end game adjustments are that strong. I don't think his lineups are that strong. But I think that he's in a little bit better of position with the bench now. But I think that Harden is a guy who can kind of run his own offense. Embiid is a guy who can kind of run his own offense. And even if you're not doing super complicated stuff, if you put those guys out there, give them the ball and give them some space, which they can do with the roster they've built, I think they're going to be in good shape. Another big thing that the 76ers have added too is maybe through subtraction. It's like, okay, you're worried about these Doc Rivers rotations, right? Well, DeAndre Jordan is not on the team anymore. That's a big win. You're not going to see any DeAndre Jordan playoff minutes from the 76ers this year. I think Tybal has a pretty good chance of not being on the team come playoff time. If there is a midseason trade for another role player, like let's say you go get a veteran team from, some rebuilding team, OKC, whoever, Matisse would probably be in that deal, right? I think that would also be additions through subtraction. I'm a big believer. It's like, yeah, the defense is great, but being, a guy who can't really space the floor on offense and doesn't really, challenge the defense in any way is too big of a hit, especially when you look at some of the lineups that the 76ers can put out. Let's say PJ Tucker is the other guy who's going to be starting, although we don't really know, along with the other four guys. It's like you'll put out a lineup of Embiid, Harris, PJ Tucker, Harden, Maxey. You have four guys who can really challenge you and score for themselves. You got five guys shooting there. You've got several good defenders. Like it's a strong lineup. So I think getting rid of some of the dud role players is going to be a big get for them, even if it's just actually having less players. So I really like the roster construction. I think that Doc Rivers, I don't think will stop great players from being great. Maybe they're a little bit more prone to getting upset in the playoffs with him. But if you don't give him the option of putting in role players who should not be playing in the playoffs on the court when they're in the playoffs, you kind of eliminate that problem. And when you give guys who are so talented offensively and are so good at running an offense like James Harden, it really takes a lot of the workload off him as a coach to scheme up things offensively, right? And I think I'm in the camp of like James Harden will probably be closer to where he was in Brooklyn than where he was in the playoffs last year, right? When he first got to Philadelphia, he was actually pretty good. I remember I felt like he came out his first game and was really strong, but he wasn't 100% by the playoffs. And it was tough to watch. Right. And you'll see people on Twitter go and be like, oh my God, I knew James Harden was such a fraud. Meanwhile, like he's limping out there and he obviously can't move the way that he normally does. So I think if you tune out the Twitter trolls who are saying like, yeah, this is just how James Harden is, he just sucks. You can look at the context of that and be like, yeah, dude, that's probably not how it's going to be going into next season. So what I'm saying is that I want to believe in the 76ers. Like, I think Embiid can stay healthy and he doesn't need to play 82 games. He needs to play 60, get you good seating and be healthy in the playoffs. He needs to be healthy at the right time, right? I think Harden can, be that guy again. I think that Tyrese Maxey could take another step. I don't think Tobias Harris is, a dud or whatever. And I think that their bench is a lot better than it was last year and still has potential to grow. But the problem with me is what stops me from being super confident in them is that there are a lot of good teams in the East. Like how many teams are telling themselves right now in the Eastern Conference alone, if we stay healthy, there's no reason why we're not one of the best contenders. Well, Boston is, Milwaukee is looking at themselves and they're saying, hey, if we didn't lose Middleton last year, we would have been fine. So we just got to stay healthy. The Heat are probably like, man, if Lowry can get healthy, if we can stay healthy, we could be better. We're absolutely contending. And teams like maybe, the Hawks are going to expect to be more competitive this year. The Cavs are going to expect to be healthier and more competitive this year. Oh, the Bulls are saying if we can stay healthy, we're going to be more competitive this year, right? So what you got to realize is that, yeah, you can tell yourself, hey, if we stay healthy, we're going to be serious contenders. There's no reason why we can't win the title. That might be true, but 8 other teams are telling themselves that. 10 other teams are telling themselves that. And staying healthy, like that's the hard part. That's the difficult part. So when you look at who's going to go and like actually do it and make it out of the East, I'm more concerned about the team that has less things they need to break their way for them to actually go and do it. Like you look at a team like Boston right now. Yeah, everybody needs to stay healthy, obviously. Anybody can get injured, but that team is young. Their best two players are not particularly injury prone. They got significantly better. They may trade for Kevin Durant. So they've improved. They've also improved on paper, and they don't have those injury prone questions, right? So with the 76ers, I'm saying if Joel Embiid stays healthy, if James Harden is himself again, if Doc Rivers isn't too much of a problem. And yeah, those things can work out for them. And honestly, like I look at it on paper and I think that they will, but then I go to a team like the Celtics and I'm like, well, I don't have to say if that many times. I don't have to question whether or not their two best players are going to be healthy, right? If I go and look at a team like the Heat, if they run it back, they were healthy last year. And if history has taught us anything over the course of the Joel Embiid 76ers era, things do not break their way. They do not get like lucky. They do not get the injury luck. I think their odds are particularly low. So I think compared to other teams, their odds are not great to be like the healthiest team in the playoffs. I think the East is incredibly tough right now in adding talent, meaning that there's a good chance they have to play 3 serious teams to get to the finals. And I think that even if all teams were totally healthy, I don't know even what a fully healthy Harden looks like, and I might still take the Bucks over them. So as a person who is not like a Sixers fan, but is loosely rooting for them to do well, because I feel like Harden is underrated as of right now in his career. I feel like Joel Embiid is one of the unluckiest and, could go down as one of the most underrated players ever, honestly. And as a Daryl Morey fan, I would like to see them win, but I am not getting my hopes up for them to get all the breaks. There's definitely a world where it does. We're not expecting like, oh, we need this G League guy to go and make an impact. We're not expecting ridiculous, unreasonable things. Embiid being healthy for the playoffs totally can happen. Harden being healthy totally can happen. Tyrese Maxey being, a step better totally can happen. The bench being better and continuing to improve totally can happen. But they're definitely not my favorites to come out of the East or win the title. I just don't think you can do that with a team that is this up and down, right? I'd say that if you had to put them in a tier, you'd have like your top tier contenders, your Golden States, your Milwaukees or whatnot, right? Teams that have won before, the fan bases are totally expecting another finals run. And if they're healthy, they should probably be the favorites or one of the 2 or 3 best favorites to come out of their conference. Then you've got like the serious contenders with some stipulations. So like maybe your Miami Heat, where they're seriously contending, but they're a little bit older and they wanted to add somebody else this year, go make the big move, and they haven't been able to find it yet. Or like your Denver Nuggets, who have been very good and you can see the world where that happens, but you don't know how Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are going to look. And then you have your like fringe contenders, teams where if everything breaks their way, they could be in the conference finals. And if you get that far, maybe you can go to the finals. Like a Hawks team would be a fringe contender. Like the Lakers would be a fringe contender if they go make like the Kyrie move. I would say I put them in that second tier. They're a serious contender. If you pick them to win it all, I can see your logic, but I don't think I have the guts to do that. So that's probably about all I've got for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments of the 76ers, what you think of James Harden. I really hope that that the narrative's on James Harden took a pay cut, and it seems like he's all in on winning next year, and he's still kind of viewed as one of those players who like only cares about his stats. If Chris Paul had stayed healthy in 2018, nobody would be talking about this. But like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff you're supposed to do on YouTube videos. I'll see you guys next time.